Let's take a look at the assets we have in the project. In the animation folder, we have the Animation Starter Pack and the Mocap Basics Pack from the Epic Marketplace. In this folder, we have the control rig that we migrated from the Control Rig Mannequin project, and we'll also be working with a Mannequin shareable control rig and a Blueprint shareable actor that was demoed in the Control Rig livestream. A huge shout out to the Control Rig team: Jeremiah Grant, Helgi Matthey, Greg Richardson, and Alex Pascal. In the Meshes folder, we have some skeletal meshes from the Epic Marketplace, including the Infinity Blade Warriors, the Military Mannequin, and the Stylized Character Kit, which is the character that you see here in the editor. The first thing we need to do is set up the retargeting on the Stylized Character skeleton so that we can transfer animation from the Animation Starter Pack and Mocap Basics Pack. I'll go ahead and select the skeletal mesh, double-click, and navigate to the Skeleton tab. And as you can see, retargeting this character will be very easy since he's based off the Epic Mannequin skeleton. To set up the retargeting, I'm going to open the Retarget Manager, and in this top section, I will add the retarget source by clicking Add New and choosing this SK Mannequin skeleton that the Stylized Character skeletal mesh is based on. In this section, I'm going to select the humanoid rig because this is a bipedal character. And as you can see, Unreal has mapped all of the bones to the proper naming conventions. I'll go ahead and click Save, and now I'll check the skeletons for the Animation Starter Pack and Mocap Basics Pack. So I'll navigate to the Animation Starter Pack skeleton, click on the Retarget Manager, and as you can see, it's missing that humanoid mapping. I'll click on Add New and choose that skeleton for the Animation Starter Pack. And for the rig, I'll select that humanoid rig and hit Save. Now I'll go and check on the Mocap Basics skeleton. And here, the character has already been mapped to that humanoid rig, so we're all set. Now we can go ahead and retarget the animation to our stylized character. Before we do that though, I'm going to create a folder in the animation folder called SCK Animation to make sure that I'm very organized as I create his animation. I'll first start with the Animation Starter Pack, and I'll go ahead and choose from the jog through the stand to prone, and I'll control-click the showcase level. And we can retarget all of these animation assets at once by simply right-clicking and going to Retarget Anim Assets, Duplicate Anim Assets, and Retarget. When this window appears, you'll see all of the skeletons that are available to target to. As you can see, there are multiple mannequin skeletons, and to make sure that we're choosing the correct one, I'm just going to hover my mouse over the file path, and I can see here that it's pointing to the Stylized Character Kit, the SCK Casual. So I'll go ahead and click that, and here you can see the retarget base pose between the two characters. Of course, in this case, they are identical, but if you are working with two different character rigs, you want to make sure that the retarget base pose matches, or else you might have some undesirable results, such as hands crossing or legs crossing. I'm going to go ahead and add a prefix, so I'll add SCK_anim, and I'll go ahead and copy this. And for the folder, I don't want it to save in that main root folder for the game. Instead, I'll change and choose that SCK animation folder that we created. And then I'll hit retarget. Next, I'll go to the Mocap Basics animation, and I'll start with the Conversations root motion. I'll select these two assets and do the same exact process. I'll go to Retarget Anim Assets, Duplicate Anim Assets, and Retarget. Choose my SCK mannequin. I'll paste in that prefix, and I'll navigate to the folder that we created, SCK Animation, and click Retarget. Same thing for the Mobility Pro root motion animation. I'll right-click and choose Retarget Anim Assets, choose my SCK skeleton, paste my prefix, and make sure I'm saving to my SCK animation folder. Click Retarget. And finally, for the walks, I'll choose the root motion animation, shift-select all of them, right-click and choose Retarget Anim Assets, choose my SCK mannequin, paste the prefix, and save in my folder. Great. So we are now all set with animation for our stylized character. In this example, it was really easy to retarget the animation since it was sharing that epic mannequin skeleton, but you might be working with different skeletal meshes and different character rigs. Some commonly used ones are the Mixamo skeleton and Advanced Skeleton 5. Here, I've laid out the mapping to show the Mixamo naming conventions of the bones and how they map to the epic Unreal skeleton. In this example, I'm showing the Advanced Skeleton 5 naming conventions and how they map to the epic mannequin skeleton. As I mentioned, it's very important to make sure that your retarget base pose matches between your two characters that you're trying to retarget animation between. So in this example, I want to retarget the mannequin skeleton to the Mixamo Xbot character. So the mannequin skeleton is in this A pose, and the Mixamo character is in the T pose. So what I would do is click on this character button and go to Bones, All Hierarchy, to show all of the joints of the skeleton. Then I can compare this to the epic skeleton, and then I can navigate to the skeleton tree, select the individual joints, and rotate them into place to match the pose for the mannequin skeleton. I do suggest turning on the snapping for rotation to ensure that your arms and legs are symmetrical. Once you're happy with the pose, you can click on Modify Pose, Use Current Pose to store this pose. The final step is going back to the skeleton tree and adjusting your translation retargeting. Typically, you'll want to have your joints set to skeleton. However, you're going to want the first two joints, which in this case for the Mixamo character, the hips are typically mapped to the root of an epic skeleton, and that should be set to animation. And the spine in this case is mapped to the pelvis, which normally you would want to be mapped to animation scaled. You want to set the pelvis to animation scaled for characters of different proportions to ensure that the animation will scale to match the character it's being applied to. So this will just make sure that the bone sits at the right height and that it's still being animated. Notice in this section in the preview scene settings, you have this preview mesh skeleton. If you see this button apply to asset, that means that the pose, the preview mesh, has not been stored. So what happens is if you come to this menu and you select your skeleton to target, you'll find that this window remains empty. So if that's the case, simply go back to your skeleton tab and go into the preview scene settings and click on the button Apply to Asset. That way, when you come in here and click on your target skeleton, it will show up. So now that we have some animation clips available to use, let's move on to setting up the control rig.